What? What is this? What's happening? What? The fact that the usually calm and composed Samantha was flustered and raising her voice made it clear that something was seriously wrong. Even I, who had only been here for a few months, could sense it, and tension spread quickly among the other staff members. After a brief silence where everyone exchanged nervous glances, we hurried over to gather near Samantha's desk. She was staring at her computer screen, her mouth moving wordlessly, and her body seemed to be trembling slightly. I never imagined something like this could happen at our bank. Since I'm hiding my true background here, I figured this wasn't my place to step in. Still, I couldn't just stand by when my colleagues, with whom I'd shared ups and downs these past months, were in trouble. My name is Tate. I'm a 39-year-old employee in the credit risk management section of the bank's risk management department. I don't work for a mega bank, this is a regional bank branch. I'm single, without a girlfriend. At one point, I had thought about getting married, but now, at this age, I feel like it's not really necessary anymore. So, I'm not actively seeking a partner, and I'm content focusing solely on my job. Now, when people picture a banker, they probably imagine someone working at a counter, right? That's not wrong, but that's not my role. You could say I'm more of a behind-the-scenes guy, the type who supports things from the background. Since banks handle money, we have to be extremely cautious. Managing money, of course, but managing customer information is also a critical task. Any leak of personal information is simply unacceptable. Our job in the risk management department is to focus on those kinds of risk prevention measures. Credit risk, in particular, comes from the loans a bank issues, and if not properly managed, it could threaten the bank's very existence. That's why it requires precise control and high-level expertise. Now, I mentioned that I'm just a regular employee with no title at this bank, but it's not because I've been drifting aimlessly until the age of 39. In my previous job, I was a section chief, a stable position. When I came to this bank, they even offered me a managerial post. But I turned it down. I'd never worked at a bank before, and I knew the idea of someone like me, who was brought in for my skills, wouldn't sit well with the banking elites here. And if I'd accepted a managerial role on top of that, how do you think things would have gone? I don't like conflicts, and I hate seeing others argue. I just want to live a peaceful life. So, I chose to start out as a regular employee, in a position that wouldn't cause any trouble. Even in my previous company, I couldn't stand the petty power struggles and the relentless race for promotions. And as a single guy surrounded by married coworkers, I was the one stuck with the late-night overtime and business trips. I don't mean to complain about people who have families. That's really a supervisor's responsibility, but leaving the employees to fight among themselves like that, it disgusted me. That was one of the major reasons I decided to change jobs. When I heard this risk management department was hiring, I thought I'd give it a shot and sell myself, and to my surprise, they hired me. It was pure luck that I ended up here. I didn't want to rock the boat, and I never wanted to experience the toxic atmosphere of my last job again. That was all I cared about. A few months passed after I started working at this bank. Given the nature of the department, the workload was overwhelming, but compared to my last job, it was nothing. No one forced me into unreasonable overtime, and I could leave on time once the work was done. The fact that this was normal here, when it hadn't been normal for me before, made my life feel much more fulfilling. In my previous company, the more capable you were, the more work they piled on you, which just felt like they were exploiting your sense of purpose. This environment was exactly what I had been hoping for. And I owe it all to my direct supervisor, the head of the credit risk management section, Samantha Kirkland. At 36 years old, she earned her position through sheer skill. From my perspective, she's incredibly competent, with no weaknesses. Add to that her beauty, and there's no one who could compete with her. Everyone should handle their own work, that's fundamental. That was Samantha's favorite phrase. It was her way of saying, if you can't handle your own tasks, what are you even doing? I don't dislike that mindset. But naturally, there were people who disagreed with Samantha. One of them was Mason, a colleague 12 years younger than me at 27. He often complained about Samantha during our breaks. Samantha is like the Iron Lady with no sense of teamwork. She's supposed to be the team leader, overseeing the workload and the strengths of each team member, and delegating tasks appropriately. Instead, she takes everything on herself, and we barely get any chance to build up experience or show results. Tate, you agree with me, right? Not knowing how to respond, I just smiled awkwardly. Samantha wasn't wrong. In fact, most people thought she was pretty spot on, though no one wanted to say it out loud. That said, Mason wasn't entirely wrong either. We are a team. If someone was slacking off, it would be a different story, but in our credit risk management section, everyone was earnest and hardworking. Slacking off didn't even seem to cross their minds. So, the idea that it would be faster if we split the work among everyone made sense too. Not wanting to take sides, I just took a sip of my coffee and said, yeah, I guess so. Mason kept inviting me for coffee during breaks. And each time it became a routine for him to gripe about Samantha. Apparently, he wasn't too fond of her. While Mason was a capable employee, I always felt he had a bit of a lazy streak. He wasn't slacking, but there were times when I'd see him daydreaming at his desk. To Mason, it was probably just a short break, but Samantha was strict about that and would often criticize him for it. He'd frequently mutter, "Man, she really hates me." A few more weeks passed. Recently, there had been an increase in loan requests, which meant our credit risk management section was swamped. We had to be cautious about issuing loans, but even more importantly, we had to keep a close eye on the loans we had already issued. If a borrower went bankrupt, recovering the loan would be difficult, so knowing when to cut off a loan was crucial. Because of this, we were doing more work outside the office, and I found myself working overtime for the first time in a while. Technically, I had finished my own tasks. Even if I had to work overtime, it only took about an hour to wrap things up. But the reason I stayed late every night was to help out the others. No one asked me to, but I wanted to do it. The people here had been so kind, patiently teaching me when I didn't know what I was doing. There was no reason not to help them when they were struggling. Mason was one of those people. Whenever I helped him out, he'd say, "Tate, you're a lifesaver. I'm so sorry for causing you trouble these past few days. Thanks for your help." It didn't feel bad to be appreciated. I mentioned earlier that Samantha was strict with Mason because he took more breaks than others, but I knew something. After Mason took his short efficiency breaks, he worked harder and faster than anyone else. Even though I'd only been here a few months, I could tell that Mason was dedicated to his work. And, despite being a lonely, almost 40-year-old single guy, he was always kind to me. That went for the rest of the team too. Naturally, I wanted to help out and work together. But there was always someone to spoil that atmosphere. Of course, it was Samantha. "Mason, isn't that your job? I've seen you sneaking in those little breaks. If you've got time to take all those short rests, you should be working. If you were more efficient, Tate wouldn't have to help you with tasks he's already finished." Mason's face tightened, and he looked like he was about to argue. I quickly stepped in to mediate. "Samantha, It's not like that. I'm doing this because I want to. As you can see, I have no wife or kids, and I'm free to help out. Is it so bad that I want to assist my colleagues?" At that, Samantha went silent. She looked like she wanted to say something more, but eventually just nodded and returned to her desk, saying it was fine as long as I didn't mind. I let out a sigh of relief, but as expected, Mason couldn't keep quiet. "What's her problem? Seriously? It's not like I'm slacking off. I just took a 5-minute break to rest my eyes, and she's giving me grief over it. Come on, calm down. She doesn't mean any harm. Samantha's just trying to make sure everyone can leave on time. She's willing to play the bad guy to make that happen." As I tried to calm Mason down, he fell silent, clearly understanding what Samantha was thinking in his own way. It was almost 6 p.m., so I hurried to finish my work. Just as I took some of Mason's tasks to move them to my desk, something unusual happened. Samantha raised her voice. What is this? What's happening? What? The fact that the usually calm and composed Samantha was flustered and shouting made it clear that something was seriously wrong. Even though I'd only been here a few months, I could sense it, and the tension spread among the other staff members. After exchanging tense glances, everyone rushed over to gather near Samantha's desk. Samantha was staring at her computer screen, her mouth moving wordlessly, and her body seemed to tremble slightly. What happened? Peeking from a distance, I saw the bank's internal security system flashing a warning on her screen. Sensing trouble, I ran over to Samantha and asked quickly, "What happened?" I got a notification about a security software update, so I clicked the link to log in, but I couldn't log in no matter how many times I tried. Then the system started lagging, and now this warning message popped up. At first glance, the website looked like the usual security site, and I even confirmed it was using HTTPS. But something about the logo at the bottom fell off. Before I could say more, the screen suddenly went black. From behind me, I heard worried murmurs from the others who had been watching. "This is bad. It might be malware. Unauthorized access." With that, everyone's eyes turned to me. And for good reason. For us, a data breach involving customer information was unthinkable. People have probably seen companies apologizing in press conferences after hackers leaked personal information following unauthorized access. That's likely what everyone was imagining. For a bank, trust is everything. And right now, that trust was under threat. It seemed like someone had tricked Samantha into entering her credentials on a fake site, and now, they were using those credentials to steal data. Whoever was behind this was highly skilled. This must be a professional hacker with advanced skills. Now that they've breached our system, there's a good chance they've planted a backdoor. We can't handle this ourselves anymore. We need to contact a forensic investigation team immediately. We were out of time. Every passing minute could mean the hacker was extracting personal data. But this is a bank, and we've fortified our defenses for such threats. The more sensitive the information, the stronger the protections. Breaking through wouldn't be easy, even for a skilled hacker. Although everyone was initially stunned, these were seasoned professionals. Mason, leading the charge, said, "I'll go report to the manager Kent," and with that, the team sprang into action. Despite the underlying panic, everyone was doing their best to help. Some called the headquarters, others called the branch manager, and some were already contacting security firms to arrange forensic analysis. While the rest of us were moving quickly, Samantha remained frozen, her eyes wide with fear. She muttered, "What should I do? What should I do?" seemingly unable to process what was happening. There was no time to explain again. I wanted to offer her some encouragement, but I knew mere words wouldn't be enough. There was only one thing to do. I steeled myself and shouted, "You're not the type of person who gives up that easily." My words seemed to snap Samantha back to reality. Her eyes regained focus, and she looked determined once again. She slapped her own cheeks, as if to snap herself out of it, and the panic in her expression vanished. "That's right. What am I doing in this state? There's work that needs to be done. I need to get a grip." That's the resolute Samantha I knew. But just as things started to settle, another problem arose. Mason and another employee contacted the security company to request a forensic investigation. However, since it was after hours, there were only a few staff members available to respond. Although the investigation could still proceed due to their 24-hour response system, there was a logistical problem. This is a regional bank branch. Being in a rural area, even if a representative were dispatched immediately, it would take at least 30 minutes for them to arrive. Ideally, we shouldn't touch the computer until the specialist arrives, but we couldn't afford to wait. I started thinking fast. Why did I come to this bank, leaving my past behind, to start over? It only took a few seconds, but it felt like I had been thinking for hours. Finally, I made up my mind. Without saying a word, I sat down in front of Samantha's desk and placed my hands on the keyboard. "Tate, what are you doing?" "They told us not to touch anything," Samantha protested. I responded calmly, overriding her words. "The bank is in trouble. Let me do what I can. I can't just sit back and watch." Samantha's eyes wavered at my words. No one knew what the right course of action was at this point. But if someone could lead us to the correct solution, they had to act. Forensic analysis of ransomware requires advanced log analysis skills, technical expertise, and experience. In other words, an average security engineer wouldn't be able to handle it. That's why companies usually rely on outside specialists for situations like this. In larger corporations, there may be in-house engineers, but due to cost and logistics, a small rural bank like ours didn't have such a luxury. That much was common sense for someone like me. This was probably why the hacker had targeted our branch in the first place. Once they gained access here, it might only be a matter of time before they could breach the headquarters' critical databases. The attacker was more formidable than we had imagined. I swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and started typing on the keyboard. Samantha moved to stop me, but Mason shook his head, holding her back. Everyone else, though worried, could only stand by and watch as I worked. The tension was palpable, but adrenaline coursed through me, and my fingers moved faster and faster on the keyboard. After a while, I finally raised my head, letting out a sigh. Immediately, questions came at me from all directions. What happened? I don't really understand what you were doing, but is it over?" I smiled and explained the situation. "I managed to secure the important personal data. I moved it to a safe server, so that should be fine. However, the attacker was quick. And there's a possibility they extracted some past contract data. The data extracted wasn't sensitive customer information, just basic contract details from past agreements. While there was a small leak, it wasn't the kind of disaster that would force us to apologize to our customers on our knees." Upon hearing that, the tension in the room lifted. Some collapsed into their chairs, while others let out shouts of joy. But Samantha remained solemn, staring at me intently. Not long after, the representative from the security company arrived. I explained the situation and asked them to double-check everything. The representative looked surprised but quickly confirmed the results, muttering, "This is incredible. As you mentioned, the virus threat appears to be neutralized. We didn't detect any backdoors either. However, considering the possibility of future attacks, well, it looks like I won't be needed here." I'm impressed, Tate. "So this is where you've been?" "Yes, well, it's been a while." "How have you been?" Since the representative and I knew each other from before, the rest of the team watched our conversation in puzzlement. Shortly afterward, Mr. Ogilvy, the bank president, along with some executive officers, arrived, having heard about the incident. They bombarded the representative with questions, who reassured them that everything was under control and briefly explained the next steps before leaving. Mr. Ogilvy and the executives, clearly busy, said they would explain any consequences later and left. It was already past 9 p.m. Then, at long last, Mason turned to me with a curious look and asked his question. "So, what's the deal here?" I kept quiet because I didn't want to interfere, but Tate, you're not just a regular guy, are you? Mason, always sharp, had suspected from the moment I joined that I wasn't an ordinary employee. "Yeah, I've had my suspicions. I mean, someone who's 39 and had a solid career before, starting as a regular employee? That was a red flag. Plus, you seem to know that security company rep pretty well. So, Tate, your previous job, security engineer, right?" Mason's confident declaration made me burst out laughing, perhaps finally releasing the tension that had built up. "Right on," I said, and with that, I decided to reveal my past to Mason. I hadn't planned on telling anyone, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to share it with Mason and the others in our department. Even though everyone still had work left to do, they indulged me for a few minutes as I shared my story. As we all chatted and laughed together, I realized something: Samantha wasn't part of the group. The next day, as soon as I arrived at work, Samantha called me over. I had a feeling I knew what this was about, so I followed her without asking. It was fall, and the chill in the air made a cup of hot coffee taste just right. We sat on a bench in the park behind the bank, and without a word, Samantha handed me a cup of black coffee. Even though Samantha wasn't fond of black coffee and had mentioned liking sweet things, it seemed she knew that I preferred mine black. I thought to myself that, despite her tough exterior with Mason, she must actually be looking out for him as well. In fact, I had heard talk of Mason being up for a promotion. As I pondered these things and took a sip of the coffee she gave me, Samantha finally spoke. "I overheard something. Tate, you used to be a hacker, didn't you?" "Well, most people call it white hat hacker these days. Technically, a hacker isn't a bad term, but when people mean it in a bad way, they call it a cracker." "Oh, sorry, I caught myself before I went too far with technical explanations." But Samantha, smiling in a way I had never seen before, said, "Go on." Since we still had time before work started and she seemed genuinely interested, I decided to share a bit more. I explained the technical terms I had used the day before and told her the same story I had shared with Mason and the others. The term hacker often brings negative connotations, but in reality, it's not inherently bad. Put simply, it refers to someone highly skilled in computers. A cracker is someone who uses that knowledge for malicious purposes, like the unauthorized access we dealt with yesterday. Since most people can't distinguish between the two, they started calling ethical hackers white hat hackers. I'm not bragging, but back in the day, I was considered a genius white hat hacker. I loved math and physics as a kid. And I was the kind of elementary schooler who'd say Isaac Newton was my favorite person. I was so into the sciences that I chose Fermat's last theorem as the topic for my thesis. Looking back, those days were really fun because I could do anything. I was proud of using my skills to help people, which is why I pursued a career as a security engineer. I wanted to become skilled enough to work as a freelancer. In my 20s, that was my goal, and I threw myself into planning, implementing, operating, and maintaining security systems, even training younger engineers. I obtained certifications like CISSP, which is highly regarded in the industry, and CISM, because I wanted to specialize in security. By my mid-30s, my career was smooth sailing. Given my track record, I was supposed to take a key position at headquarters. But I turned it down, saying, I believe it's crucial to have someone at rural branches who can respond to security issues immediately. In my experience, branches are often targeted, and important data has been extracted from simple work computers. Crackers know how to exploit security holes, and they're well aware of companies' manpower shortages and cost-cutting measures. That's why I was assigned to this rural branch. But that wasn't the only reason. There was something else, a lingering feeling that brought me here, something unresolved. Samantha Nash. Do you remember me? I asked. Samantha's eyes widened in surprise when I mentioned her maiden name. But then she quickly softened her expression and said, So it was you. You were that engineer back then. A moment of silence passed as I reflected on the past. It was several years ago, long before I came to this bank. At the time, I had been working for a different company when we received a request from a business run by a man named Mr. Nash. He wanted to discuss improving his company's security, and I was assigned to handle the project. However, just before the meeting, Mr. Nash suddenly passed away due to illness, and his daughter, Samantha, who had been groomed as his successor, took over the company. Just like I had a past, so did Samantha. Before becoming a department head, she was once the president of her father's company. Samantha had managed to run things at the top after her father's sudden death, but things did not go so well. It was likely that being the daughter of the president, Mr. Nash faced backlash. After all, a young woman with little experience had easily taken over the role of president simply because of her lineage. When the bank cut off funding, the company's finances quickly plunged into the red. Even so, Samantha, determined to keep the company her father built alive, tackled everything with a positive attitude. In fact, I once visited the company during her tenure as president, intending to discuss a contract initiated during her father's time. When I arrived, I witnessed Samantha arguing with her employees. She was passionately explaining the importance of strengthening security and stressing that they should invest in maintenance and inspection. But the employees weren't having it. They were saying things like, if you're going to spend money, give us a raise instead. I remember it vividly. In the end, the contract fell through, and I didn't meet with Samantha again after that. But I later heard that the company had gone bankrupt. The image of Samantha's determined face, as she earnestly tried to win everyone over, stuck with me. We had only met once, and yet, that image of her repeatedly bowing her head to try and persuade people left a strong impression on me. When I heard that her company had gone under and she had abandoned her father's name, Nash, and taken on her mother's maiden name, Kirkland, I became curious. A few years later, I was considering a job change when Mr. Ogilvy, the bank's president, invited me to dinner. He had heard I was looking for a new job and headhunted me. Well, I had done my share of selling myself to the bank beforehand, so it wasn't exactly the typical headhunting scenario. Originally, I had planned to take the job at the bank's headquarters, but something Mr. Ogilvy said made me reconsider completely. Our branches really need to strengthen their security soon. If you came on board, it would be a great help. I'd love your advice. We'll start with this branch. Samantha Kirkland is actively pushing for these changes, so it makes sense to start there. There are plenty of people named Nash across the country. So I wasn't sure, but in a way, it was a gamble. Could it be that the former Nash, the woman president I'd met back then, was now going by Kirkland? Maybe I could see her again. That hope drove me to request an assignment at this branch. I kept my previous career hidden, as I mentioned before, to avoid creating waves. That was the only reason. As I finished my story, I glanced over at Samantha, who had been listening intently, and saw that tears were streaming down her face. Had I said something wrong? Maybe bringing up the past was a mistake. Not knowing how to comfort her, especially since I had little experience with women, I panicked and stammered. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable by bringing up old memories." As I stepped back, Samantha gently said, "No, that's not it." Her voice was soft and kind, and I breathed a sigh of relief as I raised my head. Samantha, still gripping her cup of sweetened coffee, seemed lost in thought, looking down for a moment. Then, she raised her head again and gazed straight into my eyes. I froze, caught by her brown eyes, as she spoke. "I'm touched that you remembered that young, inexperienced woman who had just become a company president. From your perspective, I must have seemed like a complete novice who didn't even understand the basics of management, yet I was arrogantly lecturing you about security. It's laughable, really. There were so many things I should have focused on, but I didn't." In the end, after that, the company's financial troubles deepened, and a security breach led to a data leak. I had to take responsibility, and I closed the company. I held my breath, surprised by this revelation. Suddenly, everything made sense. Samantha's breakdown the day before, her panic. She must have been reliving the trauma from that time. Even a small company can be brought to its knees by a data leak, sometimes leaving behind massive debts. It seems Samantha had distanced herself from her father's name, Nash, because of those debts. Apparently, her father, in a desperate attempt to hide the company's financial troubles, had borrowed money from some shady sources. To escape the debt collectors, Samantha had started using her mother's maiden name, Kirkland. Then, Samantha revealed something unexpected. "I actually remembered you too. I didn't recognize you at first because you've lost weight and cut your hair short. But back then, when my family was being pointed at, and people whispered about our company's impending bankruptcy, not a single person stood by us. Not even when the debt collectors were chasing us. But you showed up for that meeting with me. It made me a little happy, you know." She went on to tell me how she became the head of this department. It turned out that the branch manager here was her relative. Concerned for her well-being, he took her in because he valued her diligence. But Samantha, not wanting to be seen as relying on connections, had put on a tough front, playing the role of the Iron Lady and being strict with everyone, including herself. She had hidden her true self, all because she wanted to be recognized for her own abilities. Because I was the branch manager's relative, no one would say anything to my face. But yesterday, Tate, you called me out without caring about that. It really woke me up in more ways than one. Thank you. As I looked at Samantha, her cheeks flushed, I felt as though my heart had been grabbed. It seemed that despite only meeting once before, we had been drawn to each other all along. Like opposite poles of a magnet, I said. Can you stop with the confusing metaphors? She replied, but she was smiling brighter than I had ever seen her before. The usual look of pressure and responsibility had completely melted away, revealing the true Samantha underneath. Later, the cracker was arrested, but Samantha took responsibility for what had happened and offered to resign. However, everyone convinced her to stay. It was true that Samantha had acted hastily, pressing the button due to the trauma of her previous company's collapse after being hacked. But because of the swift actions that followed, mine included, we were able to avoid the worst-case scenario. So, it was agreed with the bosses that Samantha would start over as a regular employee. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they heard the news. Mason, too, shared in that relief. If Samantha leaves, this place is doomed. He joked. Strangely enough, I was the one chosen to take over as her replacement. As Mason put it, the fact that someone who was supposed to work at headquarters is a department head at a branch is already unusual. So just roll with it. With encouragement from everyone, including Samantha herself, I didn't really have a choice but to accept. Being the department head in a specialized field like risk management wasn't easy, and there were times when I had to work overtime. But we had established a flexible and cooperative relationship that made the work rewarding. Even Mason, who had once criticized Samantha's methods, now said, "I guess I should just trust my own judgment." My goal is to establish my own unshakable style, no matter what anyone says, indicating that he had come to understand her way of thinking. Similarly, Samantha had softened. Sometimes, working together as a team really is the faster way, she admitted. Even apologizing to Mason for being too hard on him in the past. Her ability to acknowledge her mistakes so honestly showed what a kind-hearted person she was. Mason, in turn, promised to be more mindful, avoiding the habit of wandering off or daydreaming at his desk. In this way, we created a space where everyone respected each other's perspectives and values. As a result, I was finally living the peaceful life I had always envisioned. This is strange. The documents are blank, said my boss, Emily, her face pale and lips trembling as she stood nervously on stage. We were at an international conference presenting our company's latest technology development. When I checked the documents Emily was holding, I saw that they had all been replaced with blank sheets of copy paper. Who could have done something like this? But there was no time to think. As the minutes ticked by and the presentation still hadn't started, the room began to grow restless. I glanced over at Emily, who was trying to explain from memory, but her speech was shaky, and she kept making mistakes in English. The room became even more unsettled. That's when I did something Emily never expected. I grabbed the microphone. What? Why? You? Ignoring her surprise, I began my speech in English, recalling everything I had memorized from the documents. When I finally finished, the room fell into a brief silence. But what awaited afterward was something no one could have predicted. After stepping off the stage, a gentleman approached me. Feeling there was no need to hide, I told him which university I graduated from. So, you weren't just anyone after all. Emily, unable to hide her surprise, spoke to me. My name is John. I'm just a regular employee working at a company that handles biomass energy production. I switched jobs just a year ago, and in the technical department where I work, I'm at the bottom of the ladder. The company is only 5 years old, but with many talented employees, it's seen as a rising star in the industry, attracting a lot of attention. There was a time when I left my previous company and wandered around aimlessly without having secured my next job. Seeing my situation, my uncle, Howard, who is also the president of this company, stepped in and said, "John, if you haven't found your next job yet, why don't you come work for us? The skills you gained at your previous job could really be put to use here." What do you think? That's how I ended up joining this company. I joined the company, but because of some trauma from my previous job, I wasn't eager to take the initiative at work. My previous company was a major power company, but the seniority system and cliques based on university affiliations were rampant. Since there was no one from my university, I was always left out. Despite having a fair amount of skills and knowledge, I became a target of the typical tall poppy syndrome that companies often have. For the people in those cliques, my competence must have been a threat. Without any protection or support, I was eventually sidelined. I couldn't stand being treated like that just because I didn't belong to a particular clique, so I left the company. After wandering aimlessly for a while, I realized that my passion for biotechnology was still burning inside me. That was one of the reasons I accepted my uncle's offer. My interest in biotechnology had always been influenced by my uncle. He doesn't have any children, so whenever I visited him, he treated me like his own son. He used to talk passionately about biotechnology to me, even when I was just a kid, and that made me want to work in that field someday. I had considered working for my uncle's company from the start, but a part of me wanted to test how far I could go on my own. In the end, I couldn't stand the environment at my previous job and quit. My uncle reached out to me at just the right time, and I felt saved. Though I joined this company at the request of Howard, when I saw the managers clashing over their university affiliations, I thought, oh no. This company has cliques too, and I felt a bit uneasy. But unlike before, I wasn't sidelined. In fact, I was given my fair share of work, so I decided to lay low and just do the tasks assigned to me. John, which university did you go to? One of my colleagues asked, but I refused to answer. I was worried that if they knew, they might start treating me the same way as at my old job. He probably went to some third-rate school he's too embarrassed to admit. Yeah, how did someone like that even get into this company? Who knows, maybe it was just luck. Exactly. Let's just leave the grunt work to someone from a third-rate university. That seemed to settle it for them, and they never asked about my alma mater again. But I was constantly given menial tasks and treated like a newbie just because of my supposed third-rate background. Still, it was a world of difference from my previous company, and even doing the grunt work, I found myself satisfied with the environment. The tech department I work in is responsible for deciding how to shape and market the products our company develops. It plays a key role in both marketing and bridging the gap between the development department and sales teams. The development department is made up of highly specialized experts, but the tech department, which determines how to apply those developments, is also filled with highly educated individuals, second only to the development team. My direct supervisor, Emily, is a beautiful and capable boss who graduated from Kyoto University. Then there's Mark, another manager who graduated from Tokyo University, and he's equally competent. Because of this, the two are constantly competing, viewing each other as rivals. While their rivalry is partly because they joined the company at the same time, it seemed like Mark had a particular grudge against Emily. Maybe something happened between them when they first started, but I had no way of knowing. I just assumed they couldn't stand each other. One day, as I was doing some menial tasks for Emily, Mark, always eager to take a jab at her, made a snide remark. A third-rate university guy, huh? Looks like all you're good for is grunt work. Poor Emily, getting stuck with a subordinate like you. My team, on the other hand, is filled with top-notch talent. The company clearly knows who to bet on. And they've given me the best because they expect great things from me. Emily and this third-rate guy are clearly seen for what they are, unworthy. It's one thing to insult me, But why look down on Emily like that? Mark! Just as I was about to retort, Emily cut him off with a sharp reply. Mark, you seem to have a lot of free time, don't you? Oh, that's right. You can just leave everything to your brilliant team, can't you? Must be tough for them, doing all the work while you take all the credit. Keep that up, and they'll start leaving you one by one. But hey, that's none of my concern. Just make sure not to cry when it happens. Your arrogance is only going to last for so long. Tisk, you're no fun. I was just trying to give you a friendly warning. A warning? More like you're mocking me. Could you cut it out with the insults toward my team? I'm perfectly happy with John's work. And by the way, I'm busy. I don't have time to deal with someone with nothing better to do. Now, please get out of my way and go back to work. Emily's fierce glare made Mark retreat back to his desk in defeat. I couldn't help but feel guilty that Emily had to endure such comments just because of me and my supposed third-rate background. I'm sorry, Emily. Why are you apologizing? You always do your job well, and I appreciate it. If anything, I should be the one apologizing. Letting Mark say whatever he wants about you. No, Emily, let him say what he wants. I don't mind. Okay then, but let's keep up the good work. Now, back to work. Having been worn out by all the cliques at my previous company, Emily's consideration was a breath of fresh air. She didn't judge me based on my university but on the actual quality of my work. It was the first time I'd ever had a boss I truly respected. A new technology had just been developed by the R&D department, and it was handed over to our tech department. The innovation was groundbreaking, and the upper management announced that it would be presented at an upcoming international conference in Japan. We're holding a competition within the tech department to come up with the best plan for presenting this technology. Whoever wins will get to present at the conference. Let's do our best to win this. Emily and the rest of us steadily prepared for the competition. I had a feeling she didn't want to lose to Mark. Mark was no different, telling his team, "We are winning this competition, no matter what." Mark, on the other hand, seemed determined not to lose to Emily. His competitive spirit was stronger than ever. The atmosphere in the tech department was tense, with everyone focused on the competition. In the midst of this, Mark kept targeting me more than usual. This is an important competition for an international conference. People like you, with no talent, are just in the way. Get out of the tech department already. Mark. What are you talking about? John is not incompetent at all. When he organizes documents, he picks out the key points perfectly. When I ask him to translate reports, he even includes relevant references. You won't find a more capable subordinate. Oh wait, I get it. You think you're going to lose the competition, don't you? That's why you're lashing out at someone as talented as John. Admit it. You're just jealous that I have such a great team member. Go ahead, say it. Emily spoke with a confident smirk on her face. Damn it. I'm not losing this competition. Unable to come up with a response, Mark stormed off angrily. I couldn't believe Emily thought so highly of me. I never imagined I'd be seen in that light, and I felt incredibly fortunate to have her as my boss. John, we don't have much time before the competition. Stop dawdling and get those documents ready. After praising me, Emily immediately switched gears and gave me a firm order before returning to her work. Both her compliments and her instructions made me happy. I wanted to win this competition alongside her. I was determined to do everything I could. That was my way of repaying her for her kind words. At my previous company, I never even felt like this. With her words echoing in my mind, I got to work. The day of the in-house competition arrived. Both Emily and Mark gave outstanding presentations, determined not to lose to each other. After a hard-fought battle, Emily emerged victorious by a slim margin. Mark's frustration was clear. Beside him, Emily stood with a hint of pride in her expression. "I have to admit, I lost to you in this competition. But next time, I'll make sure to win. I'm not planning on losing either. Well, for now, let's call a truce for the international conference. I'll help you with your proposal to make sure this project succeeds." Mark, determined to unite the tech department, aimed to move forward as a team. For someone like me, who had seen sabotage and underhanded tactics used to bring down rivals in my previous job, I was taken aback by Mark's willingness to collaborate for the company's success. But I realized this is how a company should ideally operate, and it made sense to me. With everyone working together, our department's carefully crafted proposal steadily progressed toward the international conference. The sight of Emily and Mark working side by side was almost dazzling to me. On the day of the conference, our company was honored with the final presentation due to the brilliance of our project. Normally, a major power company would close the event as the highlight. But Emily's proposal was so groundbreaking that even the experts were impressed, earning us that prestigious spot. The fact that our presentation was suddenly moved to the final slot showed just how high the expectations were. The tension increased whether we liked it or not. At the time, we hadn't noticed the man who was bitter about us getting the final slot. We never imagined how it would escalate into the situation that unfolded. The presentation right before ours was by the major power company where I had worked. When I entered the shared waiting room, I saw several faces I wished I hadn't, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that washed over me. I tried to avoid eye contact, but my former colleague Miles approached me with a smug grin, as if he was amused by my discomfort. "John, long time no see. So, you couldn't make it at our company and ended up at some tiny firm? You've really fallen, haven't you? Well, at least you can still do your job, I guess." He mocked me with a smug grin. Miles was a former colleague of mine, and we had joined the company at the same time. He graduated from Tokyo University and belonged to a powerful clique. Because of that, he landed in important departments and steadily built up his achievements, while I, with no connections, was pushed into an insignificant role, and he often mocked me for it. Even after leaving that company, he's still belittling me, even here. It filled me with frustration. Seeing people I never wanted to meet again being ridiculed by Miles, I started to regret coming here. "Hey, is that you, Miles? Long time no see." I turned around, and there stood Mark. In my current situation, Mark's presence was a relief. He had accompanied Emily to the international conference to assist her with the presentation. Presenting at the international conference meant we were essentially representing the country. Failure was not an option. They were clearly taking every precaution to ensure success. Come to think of it, Mark graduated from Tokyo University. Is that why he knows Miles? As I wondered about it, Mark grinned and teased Miles, "You haven't changed a bit." Looking uncomfortable, Miles quickly said, "Long time no see. I've got to get ready, so excuse me," and hurried away. "Mark, do you know Miles?" "Yeah, he was one of my students back when I was working on my doctorate." "Oh, I see." Mark had earned his doctorate, and during that time, Miles had been one of his students. He's always been a sneaky guy. I wonder who he takes after. Still the same sarcastic type, too. Mark laughed as he said this, and I couldn't find anything to say in response. Mark's words hit the mark, but I had a feeling that if I said anything, he'd just mock me like usual. Miles worked in a different department, but he always found opportunities to belittle and harass me. He had always been that way, and I couldn't help but think, well, I guess he really does take after his mentor. John, we've got work to do. You're still the rookie, so get to it. Mark spoke to me in his usual commanding tone. Though it wasn't his intention, I felt like Mark had thrown me a lifeline, revealing an unexpected side of him. There had to be a reason why Miles had hurriedly left in such a panic. I couldn't help but wonder if Mark had some leverage over him. Finally, it was our turn to present. I was assigned to assist Emily and stood beside her. She carried the materials as we both stepped up onto the stage. The plan was to explain the project using the documents while referencing the visuals displayed on the monitor, but things weren't going as planned. When I looked over at Emily, her face had turned pale, and she was frantically searching for something. Even though she had the documents in her hand, something was clearly wrong. Emily, what's wrong? You look terrible. What's going on? With trembling lips, she muttered quietly, "This is strange. The documents are blank." Panicked, I quickly checked the materials. All the documents, which were supposed to be in English for the presentation, had been replaced with blank sheets of copy paper. On top of that, the laptop containing the data wasn't working, so it wouldn't even turn on. Who could have done something like this? But there was no time for finger-pointing. Time was ticking away. The delay in starting the presentation was causing a stir in the audience. Emily tried to recall the information and began speaking, but she was too nervous. Stumbling over her words and making mistake after mistake in English, which only caused the room to grow more restless. This wasn't going to work. I decided to go backstage and report to Mark that the materials had been stolen. "Mark, someone has switched the presentation documents with blank sheets." "What?" "Also, the laptop containing the data isn't working. Could you arrange for another one so we can access the files?" "Got it. I'll get it sorted right away." Mark went to the conference staff, explained the situation, and arranged for a laptop to be provided. Meanwhile, time was ticking away. The audience grew increasingly restless. I grabbed the microphone from a flustered Emily and, recalling the information in my head, began explaining in her place. I had been involved in the preparation for the conference, compiling references, organizing materials, and making copies. Since I had reviewed the documents so many times, all the information was stored in my memory. Using that knowledge, I explained the project in English, matching my words to the slides in front of me. "What? John? Why?" Emily later told me she was surprised by how fluent my English was and how confidently I presented the project. Snapping back to reality, she left the stage, trusting me to handle the rest of the explanation. In the meantime, Mark had managed to get a laptop, and he and Emily returned to the stage just as I reached the latter half of the presentation. I felt a wave of relief. Though I had most of the information memorized, there were still parts one wasn't sure about. With the laptop up and running, I continued my presentation, now able to check the data as I went. When I finished, there was a brief silence, followed by thunderous applause. Cheers of bravo echoed through the room. Though it had started off rocky, in the end, everything turned out well. Our project presentation was a success. I bowed and stepped down from the stage. Even then, the applause didn't stop. Finally, it was over. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. But just as I relaxed, my legs gave out, and I collapsed right there. Seeing this, Emily and Mark rushed over, supporting me by the arms as they helped me backstage. "John, great job. Your English was so fluent, and I'm amazed." I was so nervous that my mind went blank, and I couldn't think straight. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in. Thank you. Yeah, John, you were incredible, not just with your English, but how confident you looked up there. Emily and Mark praised me for my performance. I blushed a little from their praise. Just then, a gentleman approached me. The foreign man walked up, hugged me, and exclaimed, "I knew it. It's you, Johnny." "You're Johnny, aren't you? Who is that?" Emily and Mark asked in surprise. "Mr. Smith, it's been a long time." I responded. "Mr. Smith?" Emily and Mark looked at me curiously. Since Mr. Smith would probably explain things anyway, there was no need to hide it. After all, they were the ones who had praised my speech earlier. For the first time here, I mentioned my alma mater. Mr. Smith was my professor at Harvard and also my academic advisor. "What? Harvard?" They both exclaimed in unison, and I replied with a sheepish smile, "Yeah, more or less." Mr. Smith said, "That's right." Back in his Harvard days, Johnny was an excellent student and graduated at the top of his class. Top of the class? Once again, Emily and Mark were shocked. Mr. Smith continued speaking, barely noticing their reaction. "You were incredible during that presentation, as always. I'm so proud to see you're still doing great things." Mr. Smith gave me a hearty pat on the shoulder and laughed cheerfully. His face was beaming with a broad smile. "Well, I hope we meet again soon." Mr. Smith said that and walked away. A long silence followed, and when I looked at Emily and Mark, they both had furrowed brows, clearly deep in thought. Feeling uncomfortable, I straightened myself up and tried to quickly make my way back to the waiting room. "So, you really aren't just anyone, are you?" It was Emily who broke the silence. She, who had always observed my work, smiled and said, "You never mentioned your alma mater, so everyone assumed you went to some third-rate school. But from the way you organize documents and the precision of your reports, I always knew you weren't from some mediocre university. But still, graduating at the top of your class at Harvard? You never cease to amaze me, John." She said this with a smile. "Yeah, whether it's Tokyo University or Kyoto University, there's no competing with Harvard." Even Mark, with a wry smile, agreed as he said that. "No, I just got really into biotechnology, that's all." "It's not such a big deal," I said, trying to downplay it. "What are you talking about, Mr. Top of the Class? What are you talking about, Mr. Top of the Class?" Once again, they were perfectly in sync, laughing together. I used to think they were like oil and water, but to see them this in tune, it was like they were reading each other's minds. It seemed like their teamwork on this project had forged a sense of camaraderie, creating an atmosphere only the two of them could understand. After that, we discovered who had stolen Mark's documents. "Emily, we caught the guy who stole the documents." "What? Who is it?" "It was someone from the major electric company before us." "You know him, John, it's Miles." Mark found it hard to believe that one of his former students was the culprit, but it also made sense. Back in his school days, Miles used to turn in reports that others had written for him. And he would even steal other people's research ideas and pass them off as his own. His father was a professor at Tokyo University, so many students felt they had no choice but to comply with the pressure. Even Mark couldn't resist it at the time. It seemed like Mark had joined this company to escape those chains. I realized that Mark had his own struggles, which made me feel unexpectedly close to him. I noticed Miles acting suspiciously in the waiting room. He always gets nervous when he's up to something. He was like that in college too. I suspected he might be involved, so I confronted him. He tried to hide a paper bag, but when I snatched it from him and checked inside, sure enough, it had the documents for the competition, Mark said, laughing. I was impressed by how well Mark knew his former student, Miles. Thanks to Mark, we were able to catch the culprit. Regarding Miles's fate, Emily said, from here on, it's best not to act on our own. We should leave it to the company's lawyers. So we decided to head back to the office. I felt sorry for Miles, knowing that after building up his career so far, there was probably no future left for him at the company. However, considering what he had done, I felt he deserved the consequences. After that, Emily, Mark, and I returned to the office and reported everything to President Howard. It must have been tough, but it looks like the project presentation went well. Great job, everyone. President Howard, thoroughly satisfied, praised and thanked us for our hard work. Mr. Howard, did you know that John graduated at the top of his class from Harvard? Emily asked. Of course I knew, he's my nephew. After he left his previous job and hadn't decided on a new company, I invited him to join us. What? Why didn't you tell us that? Well, John told me that his background caused him problems at his last job, and he ended up getting sidelined because of it. So, I thought it would be better to keep it quiet this time. He also asked me not to mention that he was my nephew. He spoke, clearly flustered by Emily's intense demeanor. Cats hide their claws. That's John in a nutshell. I'm lucky to have such a skilled subordinate. Now I'll have to make sure he keeps up the hard work. With that, Emily flashed a confident, sly smile. Yeah, if he's that good, he'll have plenty of work coming his way. Even Mark said that as he gave me a pat on the shoulder. Seeing the look in their eyes as they agreed, I felt a cold sweat run down my back, sensing an indescribable fear. I truly owe a lot to my uncle, President Howard. If it weren't for him, I might never have escaped my disillusionment with people. Meeting a boss I could respect helped reignite my passion for biotechnology. Later, Miles ended up being forced out of his company. Whether it was the company's decision or his own, we never found out, but his company's official stance was that it was his decision alone. We heard about it from President Howard later. Despite his loyalty to his faction, not even they would stand up for Miles. It might have been a reflection of the culture at the company. After that, I unexpectedly found myself promoted to the position of project leader. It was also a recognition of the success of the international conference. But the role of project leader was really just a glorified assistant to Emily and Mark. Proof of this was how, despite being Emily's direct subordinate, Mark would also take advantage of my position. Emily, it's not fair for you to hog John all to yourself. What are you talking about? John is my capable subordinate. There's no way I'm letting him be your lackey. As Mark tried to pull me along, Emily stopped him and firmly said her piece. Watching the two of them bicker over me was like seeing children fighting over a toy, and I couldn't help but find it amusing. I find their daily back and forth quite endearing. They've probably been aware of each other since they started at the company, but being rivals seemed to have drawn a line between them. If I noticed it, I'm sure everyone else had too. The only ones unaware were the two of them. There they go again, Emily and Mark are at it. Honestly, it's like they're always fighting over nothing. They might as well just get together already. Yeah, but wouldn't they just fight every day if they did? Who knows? Mark might end up completely under Emily's thumb. Yeah, you're probably right. I overheard these murmurs among our team. What are you talking about? Emily asked. Nothing at all. They exchanged glances and laughed. Thinking back, maybe their cooperation during the international conference came from them not really disliking each other after all. I believe that rivalry begins with mutual recognition and respect. It's rare to find someone who can push you to grow and improve like that. Seeing how much they appreciate and think of each other, I can't help but think, why don't they just get together already? Someday, I'm going to tell them exactly that, since they're both completely oblivious to each other's feelings. I'm sorry. What? On the flight, I couldn't help myself when I saw a flight attendant walking around showing her underwear, so I stood up and approached her. Sir. Oh no, is this a pervert? Here, of all places? The flight attendant screamed, and the surrounding passengers went into a frenzy. All because I got too close to her. How long do you plan to keep touching me? She glared at me with tears in her eyes. But right after that, I'd like to see you later. A message she sent to me. That was the unexpected beginning of our evening together. Ladies and gentlemen, the aircraft is now cruising. The seatbelt sign turns off with the in-flight announcement. The tension that was in the air since takeoff finally eases a little. Passengers' voices start to rise from all around the cabin. Look, Mom, we're flying in the sky. Where should we go first when we get there? I love this moment. My name is Bradley, and I'm 28 years old. Right now, I'm on a domestic flight for work. Would you like something to drink? Now that the plane has leveled off, the flight attendant, or FA, starts walking down the aisle with the cart. I consider ordering a coffee as I gaze out the window. The weather has been clear since morning, and the view outside is more spectacular than ever. Are we looking at the same thing right now, I wonder? Sir? Whoa! I was so engrossed in the view outside that I didn't notice her until she spoke to me. The FA had reached my seat at the front of the plane without me realizing it. Because I suddenly raised my voice, she looked at me with wide eyes. I'm sorry, I was worried you might not be feeling well. No, I'm fine, I'm sorry. I apologized and asked for coffee, then she replied with a bright smile, certainly. I couldn't help but be captivated by her smile. What a beautiful person, with such a gorgeous smile, I thought. People often say FAs are often beautiful, and seeing her, I had to agree. Her features are, of course, striking, and her brisk movements exude elegance. Her posture, standing tall and straight, is stunning as well. I couldn't help but follow her movements with my eyes until she handed me the cup of coffee. Here you go. It's hot, so please be careful. Oh, thank you. Smiling again, she turned around to attend to a passenger calling from the back. And that's when it happened. There was a snap, a sound like something popping. What was that? Although I frequently fly for work, I had never heard a sound like that before. Looking around to find the source of the noise, I glanced behind me and almost shouted, "Oh no!" The sound came from the flight attendant's skirt. The hook on her waist had broken, causing the seams of her skirt to open wide on both sides. And as she moved, the zipper started to slide down on its own. Oh no, I can't take this anymore. The moment her white underwear became visible through the opening of the zipper. I stood up from my seat and hurriedly took off my jacket. I'm sorry. What? As I covered the flight attendant's waist with my jacket, she turned around at the same time. In that instant, in my haste, I accidentally tripped. Sir, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to save her from embarrassment and secretly tell her about the skirt while covering her with my jacket. But because I tripped, I lost my balance, and to onlookers, it looked like I was hugging her. Oh no, is this a pervert? What? A passenger who saw the scene muttered in a rather loud voice, which triggered the others. The other passengers began to stir, saying things like a pervert here, and leaned into the aisle, all eyes now on us. I'm sorry. It's not what it looks like. I hurriedly distanced myself from her, trying to explain. But even so, I couldn't let go of the flight attendant's waist. If I did, the jacket would fall, and her underwear would be completely exposed. Then, at that moment, "How long do you plan to keep touching me?" She muttered in a low voice that only I could hear, then looked up and glared at me sharply. Her face looked like she was about to cry. Summer? What? Seeing her face, a name slipped from my lips. For a brief moment, the flight attendant furrowed her brows in confusion. Bradley? With a surprised expression, she said my name. Thanks for earlier, and sorry. I was a bit suspicious. It was after the plane had landed, and I was taking a break in the airport lobby. The flight attendant from earlier walked towards me. She was holding my neatly folded jacket. My skirt is fixed now, thanks to you. Oh, that's good, I'm glad to hear that. After she noticed the problem with her skirt, she hurried to the restroom, leaving me to spend the rest of the flight feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles because of the misunderstanding. But if she's Summer, my high school classmate, managed to avoid embarrassment, then it was worth it. I have to catch my next flight. See you later, Bradley. As soon as I took my jacket from her, Summer hurriedly ran back across the lobby. Watching her busy back, I thought. Then I noticed a note attached to my jacket. If you have time, I'd like to see you later. Seeing her familiar handwriting made my heart skip a beat. Summer, you made your dream come true. This chance encounter wasn't just with any classmate. She was the one I had a crush on 12 years ago. My name is Summer Winters. Isn't it funny to have both Summer and Winter in my name? It was the day we started high school. The girl sitting next to me said that, and her smile was as bright as the sun. No, I don't think it's strange or anything. Even before she spoke to me, I was already nervous because a cute girl was sitting next to me. With her smiling like that, I couldn't even think of responding properly. I just looked down and answered as best as I could. Nice to meet you, Bradley. Despite my unfriendly demeanor, Summer showed no sign of being bothered and extended her hand towards me. Ha! Let's shake hands. As in nice to meet you and let's get along handshake. What? In that moment, my heart was pounding so hard that I can't even remember if I shook hands with Summer or not. With her cute and incredibly cheerful personality, she quickly became the class favorite. I always watched her from afar, who was constantly surrounded by people. I couldn't possibly confess, I fell in love at first sight, even if the world were ending. I want to be a flight attendant. One day during lunch, Summer was unusually alone. As she unwrapped her bento box at her desk, she suddenly started talking to me. Bradley, have you ever flown on a plane? No, I haven't, but a flight attendant means cabin crew, right? Yes, that's right, I want to become a flight attendant. I haven't told anyone else yet. No one yet? So I was the first person to know about Summer's dream. I felt my heart skip a beat as she flashed me a bright smile. Do you think I can become a flight attendant, Bradley? In my mind, I immediately thought, you can do it. I heard that flight attendants need to be tall, because they have to help passengers with luggage in the overhead compartments. Summer, who was nearly 5 feet 7 inches and excelled at basketball in gym class, seemed perfect for it. Not to mention her kind personality and her attentiveness to others. I'm sure she'd quickly notice if any passengers needed help. I don't think you can do it, being a flight attendant. The words that came out were the opposite of what I felt because I was too shy. I imagined her as an adult, wearing the flight attendant uniform with a bright smile. In response to my words, Summer murmured, "Oh, that's right. If I stay like this, it's impossible." Summer? Please, Bradley. Be my teacher. What? From that day after school, I started teaching Summer English. Isn't English an essential skill for flight attendants? But I've always been clueless when it comes to English. I'm glad you agreed. Can I thank you with some bread from the school store? You don't have to. I'm not in any clubs at school, so I have time. I wasn't good at socializing, and my only merit was that my grades were above average. Inwardly, I was thrilled at the once-in-a-lifetime chance to get closer to the girl I had a crush on, thinking, yes. This structure is the present perfect tense we learned recently, so, like this. Do you get it? Let me see. When Summer tilted her head, a soft floral scent reached me. Each time, my heart would race, and I'd think things I could never tell her. I hope she never gets the hang of English. Oh, I get it now. Summer was already smart, so she quickly understood everything I taught her. Look. I improved by 30 points on the test. Maybe you're a genius for teaching me English, Bradley. No, I'm not. You should become a teacher. You'd be great at it. I can't. I probably couldn't even talk to the students. Is that so? Well then. Bradley, you should become a pilot. Summer casually suggested this. A pilot? Yeah. Since you're so smart, I think you'd make a great airplane pilot. No. That's way harder than becoming a teacher. If I become a flight attendant and you're the pilot of my plane, we could be together even when we're adults. What? Summer had a habit of saying outrageous things like that without a second thought. She was unaware of how nervous it made me, leaving me always worried that I might misunderstand her intentions. But eventually, those days came to an end. Hey, Brad. Did you seriously write "I want to be a pilot" on your career survey? About 3 months after I started spending time with Summer after school. While waiting for her in an empty classroom as usual, it was not Summer but a classmate named Adam who came in. Hey, what's the deal? You aiming to be a pilot, Bradley? We had been at the same school for half a year, coming from different middle schools, but Adam, who I had never spoken to before, put his arm around my shoulder with an overly familiar grin. It was clear he was mocking me. How do you know about that? I overheard you and Summer talking about it. I was curious if you were serious about it. Adam went to the same middle school as Summer. He had great grades and was excellent at sports. Unlike me, he was also good at socializing and had a lot of friends. There were even rumors that he liked Summer. I felt inferior and didn't like Adam very much. And at this moment, I clearly realized I hated him. What if it's true? Oh, really? Like that could never happen. What do you mean? Did you even check how much pilot training costs? It's at least $100,000. No way you could afford it, Bradley. Didn't know. Adam was saying this because my family was poor. About 2 weeks earlier, my father had suddenly passed away in an accident. With the loss of our family's breadwinner, my mother, who had been a homemaker, was managing to keep things going by working part-time jobs. I had 2 younger brothers, so just getting by was challenging enough. I didn't need Adam to tell me that I needed to give up on my budding dream. I'm not going to be a pilot. Is that so? Well, maybe I'll do it then. You know, my dad's a CEO, so I've got the luxury of trying the exams 2 or 3 times if needed. Adam? Right then, Summer, who had been running late, poked her head in. See you later. Adam said with a bright smile, giving me a pat on the shoulder as he left the classroom. Oh, Summer, I can teach you English. Bradley seems to be busy with all his family stuff. Oh, really? I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's okay. I didn't want Summer to know that I was taking care of the housework and looking after my brothers, while my mom worked, or that I was looking for a part-time job, because we probably wouldn't be able to afford tuition otherwise. That 1 hour after school with Summer was the only thing that kept me going. It wasn't long after Summer told me, "I'll have Adam teach me English," my family decided to move. We were going to live in the countryside where my mom's parents lived, as the cost of living was cheaper there than where we were now. When my mother told me we were moving, the first thing that came to mind was, I should confess to Summer. Even if nothing came of it, I knew I'd regret leaving without telling her how I felt. Summer, can I talk to you after school today? There's something I need to tell you. Summoning all my courage, I spoke to her at the desk next to mine. Knowing about my transfer, Summer didn't give me her usual bright smile. Instead, she looked down and mumbled, "Sorry." Oh. I guess you need to study English. It's not that. Bradley, can you be in the classroom after school today? What? There's something Laura wants to tell you. Laura was the classmate Summer was closest to at the time. Not knowing why, I waited in the classroom after school for Laura. And then, Bradley, I've liked you for a while. What? I was confessed to by Summer's best friend before I could tell Summer how I felt about her. After that, things became awkward between Summer and me. In the end, I never confessed, and the day of the transfer arrived. I'll become a flight attendant. I'll keep studying hard and, definitely. The last time I saw Summer, her eyes were full of tears. With a face that looked like she was about to cry, she handed me an envelope labeled, "To Bradley," and made a promise. "You'll be a pilot too, right, Bradley?" When we're on the same plane, we can fly together one day. Promise. I couldn't say either yes or I can't. I silently turned my back on her and left the school. It's been 12 years since then. Time sure flies. Yes, it's been 12 years since then, and today, I ran into Summer by pure chance. Thanks for coming. Are you sure it's okay with your schedule? Sitting across from me, she first expressed concern about my plans. That's just like Summer. Even though she looked so much more grown up, she was still the same on the inside, the same girl I had once liked. I'm just staying at a hotel tonight. That's great. So, can we have a drink together tonight? Sure. As always, she was good at making my heart skip a beat. When I laughed and said, I'd love to, Summer smiled brightly. Her smile was just as bright as the sun, just like back then. The note she handed me had the name of a restaurant near the airport. Arriving a little late, Summer wore a light green dress that matched the early summer season. Her makeup was more subdued than when she was on the plane, giving her a slightly youthful appearance. Even so, she was still a beautiful, mature woman. Even knowing she was a former classmate, I felt nervous around her. How's your mom doing, Bradley? Oh, she's doing well. She's farming with my grandparents now. My brothers have moved out, so she's just enjoying life at a leisurely pace. Have you been back to your family home, Summer? I've been too busy lately, so not really. I don't think I'll make it this summer either. Well, your work is busiest when everyone else is on holiday. As we ate dinner together, my nerves gradually eased, and we started to chat freely. Naturally, the conversation turned to my current situation. So, what are you doing for work these days, Bradley? I'm just an office worker. You know, the usual. I'm here on a business trip. I looked away from Summer slightly out of guilt. I wasn't able to keep the promise I made to her. I never became a pilot after all. I think you knew, Summer. Back then, things were pretty hard at home. Yes. It finally calmed down after a few years, but by that time, I didn't qualify to be a pilot anymore. What? It's my eyes. I pointed to my eyes. To be an airplane pilot, you must pass a legally mandated physical exam. Since pilots are responsible for so many lives, a vision test is naturally part of that. My eyesight didn't meet the passing criteria. I wear contacts now, but I still don't meet the requirements. When I realized that, I finally gave up. My mother worked day and night to raise 3 children. Even so, she managed to scrape together the entrance fee and said, "Now you can go to college." I was grateful and took out loans to attend university. While studying, I also worked several part-time jobs to help my mom with my brother's education, and that's about all I remember. Those 4 years were busy. Even so, I still wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to keep my promise to Summer. Some airlines train their pilots in-house, so even though I couldn't attend a flight school, I thought there might still be a path. But it might have been because I studied late into the night after work. When I started my 3rd year, my eyesight suddenly took a big dive. I was just about to start my job search and was looking for airlines with pilot training programs. I thought you must be doing great on your path to becoming a flight attendant. I mean, you must be close to achieving your dream by now. Compared to that, I felt like I'd thrown away our promise. I felt pathetic. Is that why you never contacted me? I waited for you, you know. I'm sorry. On the day I transferred, Summer handed me an envelope. The letter inside expressed gratitude for teaching her English and included her phone number. She had suggested many times, let's exchange numbers, but I always turned her down out of embarrassment. In truth, I really wanted to exchange numbers. But once I finally got her number in the end, I never contacted her. Bradley. In a slightly angry tone, Summer said my name. Suddenly, she downed her glass of wine in one go. Summer. Seriously, what is wrong with you? What do you mean, oh? I had a realization. Could Summer be talking about what happened 12 years ago? About what happened right before I transferred schools. I'm sorry. I didn't really know Laura that well. We'd hardly talked, so when she suddenly said she liked me, I thought it was some kind of prank. I'm not talking about you rejecting Laura. Summer raised her voice, her face slightly flushed from the alcohol. But when the surrounding customers all turned to look at her, she shrugged her shoulders and, lowering her voice, whispered, I'm sorry. Why are you so lacking in confidence? What? I would have been happy to hear from you, no matter what. You've worked so hard, and you were trying to keep our promise. Summer. Today, I realized something. No matter who you are, Bradley, She lifted her face and looked at me directly. Her eyes, clear and bright as if they could draw me in, glistened slightly with tears. They were so beautiful that I forgot what I wanted to say and just stared back. Bradley, back then, I couldn't say it because of Laura, but... yeah. I couldn't hear the voices of the other customers or the classical music playing in the restaurant. It felt like my entire body became one big ear, listening intently to the words Summer was about to say. About you, Bradley. Hey, are you by any chance Brad? No, Bradley, right? Summer's voice was drowned out by a sudden shout. The person making a scene while pointing at me was a rugged man with suntan skin, a sharp face, and a crisp white shirt. I realized immediately who it was. Adam? That's right. It's been a while, Bradley. How have you been? Adam. Like Summer, he was a former classmate of mine and a person with whom I had a bit of a history. Oh, and Summer, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to see you here with Bradley. Adam. With a troubled expression, Summer stood up. Then she wobbled unsteadily on her feet. Are you okay, Summer? I think I had a little too much to drink. I'll be right back after I fix my makeup. She went to the restroom, and Adam took the opportunity to plop down into the seat she vacated. He shot me a sharp glare. I'll let it slide just this once. What do you mean? For having dinner with Summer. You know she's seeing me now, right? What? In the past, Adam and I were rivals in love. We both had feelings for Summer. But Adam had declared triumphantly that he was the one who won her heart. And... oh, by the way, I actually became a pilot. I'm working for the same airline as Summer. In fact, I was on the plane you flew in on today. Just to be clear, it wasn't my dad's connections. I mean, he paid for it, but I got the job on my own merits. Really? You get it, right, Bradley? Impatient with my lack of reaction, Adam stood up abruptly. He leaned over and got right in my face. Stay away from Summer from now on. I'm the one flying with her now. I'll be the one to make her happy. The competition is long over. The moment I got into flight school. No, the moment you were born into a family without money. Under the table, he stomped hard on my foot, as if that was the final word, then sat back in his chair with a satisfied grin. Just then, Summer returned. Oh, Adam, that's my seat. Sorry. Since I'm here, I thought I'd have a quick bite, too. I need to go over tomorrow's flight. You never do that. Sorry, Bradley. No, it's fine. So they were dating. Thinking about it, they seemed closer than just childhood friends. Summer looked apologetic as she didn't chase Adam away. While they discussed work, I tried to make myself invisible, shrinking into silence. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk much. Do you want to go somewhere else? Once we left the restaurant, Summer suggested that. But Adam was standing behind her, giving me a piercing glare, so I shook my head. No, I don't want to get in the way. In the way? It's getting late. I have work tomorrow, so I'll head out. Oh, that's a shame, especially since we finally got to see each other. Hearing Summer's words made me feel incredibly grateful. I was glad to have fallen for her, and despite my broken heart, I felt strangely at peace. I wish you happiness. Take care. I turned my back to Summer and started walking toward the hotel. I wasn't sure how far I'd walked. Suddenly, I heard the click-clack of someone running in heels behind me. No. What? With a loud thud, something hit my back hard. Surprised, I turned around to see Summer clinging to my back, panting for breath. Sorry, my legs just gave out. Are you okay? Why were you in such a hurry? Because I almost forgot to ask you something important. Something important. Regaining her balance and taking a deep breath, Summer stood straight and faced me. We'll meet again, right? Ignoring the passers-by, we gazed at each other. Summer. Hey, we haven't finished preparing for tomorrow. Let's go. Oh, Adam. The words I wanted to say, I really do want to see you again, were interrupted by Adam, who had followed Summer. He grabbed her arm and pulled her away from me. Don't make a move on Summer. If I see you again, remember this. He spat out that as he left. See you, Bradley. For sure. Summer glanced back at me several times as she disappeared into the bustling city with Adam. The two of them would be alone together from here on out. Let's go. Pushing aside the thoughts that had started creeping in, I turned around and walked back to the hotel. Goodbye, Summer. The next day, I was at the airport again for work. So this is the place. When I reached the meeting spot, the person I was supposed to meet hadn't arrived yet. Instead, Bradley? What are you doing here? The person lounging on a sofa noticed me and sat up. Adam. Hey, how'd you get in here? This is a special lounge only for selected people. Indeed. I was meeting someone in the special lounge at the airport. This calm and dimly lit space was lined with luxurious leather sofas. And the marble floor was polished so thoroughly that it made you hesitate to step on it. A private bar was also available, where you could enjoy drinks from around the world at any time. This so-called VIP room was reserved for only a select few first-class passengers. Come on, give me a break. Are you going to hang around me now, not just Summer? No, it's not like that. I found it odd that Adam was here. Yawning as if he were at home, Adam stood up with a weary sigh, saying, "Oh, boy." He was wearing a pilot's uniform. It looked like he had a flight coming up. There are always customers who barge in uninvited, and they're always from economy class. I guess you need to be in a certain social class to figure out where you belong. What are you trying to say? Oh, I guess you didn't get it. They say that if there's a 20-point IQ difference, a conversation won't make sense, right? Bradley, who used to compete with me in grades, must have worn out his brain with work. Since I stayed silent, Adam lay back down on the sofa. He kicked off his shoes and lounged around as if he owned the place. Though he was just another employee at the airline operating this lounge. Are you allowed to be here, Adam? Me? Oh yeah, no problem. It's like my own room. I always rest here before a flight. I see. That being said, you get it now, right, Bradley? His smug face said more than words ever could, that he had everything I didn't. A career as a pilot. The right to come and go from this VIP lounge as he pleased, and Summer. So, I'm going to take another nap. Time for you to leave, Bradley, since you came in by mistake. No. I'm here for a reason. A reason? As if you'd have. Here, Adam's expression shifted to one of sudden realization. A grin spread across his face. Are you here to clean? What? That makes sense. Go on, do your thing. What are you? You're a cleaner, right? Does Summer know you've fallen to that kind of job? What? What made me suddenly angry wasn't being mistaken for a janitor. It was Adam's tone, which looked down on both me and the cleaning profession. Adam, don't you know? Ha! He noticed the change in my expression. He sat up from the sofa and looked at me in confusion. Then, it happened all at once. He suddenly jumped up from the sofa as if he had been jolted by electricity. "Mr. Irwin, what are you doing here?" The person glaring at Adam with a suspicious look is a man even I knew. He is the president of the airline that managed this lounge, Mr. Irwin. This isn't a place for staff to take a break. Of course. "Hey, you there, get out of here. Now." At first, Adam turned pale at Mr. Irwin's sudden appearance, but then he regained his confidence and grabbed my arm tightly. "Get out of here, you loser janitor." He tried to drag me toward the exit, but that's when it happened. "I asked you what you were doing, Adam." The windows in the lounge seemed to shake with the force of Mr. Irwin's voice as he yelled at Adam. "I meant, you. How dare you talk like that to Bradley? Apologize to him immediately." "What? Bradley? I apologize, Bradley. I'm sorry for my employee's behavior." Mr. Irwin bowed his head to me, his face pale. He was, in fact, the person I was supposed to meet. But Adam, still unable to grasp the situation, stood there with his mouth agape. "Bradley, are you some kind of VIP? Don't be disrespectful, you fool. Our company wouldn't be here without him." "What?" Mr. Irwin pushed down on Adam's head with one hand. He forced Adam to bow his head to me and said, "It's been a while. Thank you for all your help back then." Then, to a man over 30 years younger than himself, he gave a perfect, deep bow. I had to give up my dream of becoming a pilot due to my eyesight. After graduating from college, I got a job at a consulting firm in Tokyo, working on business turnarounds and performance improvement for companies. A few years later, when I began to be trusted with work independently. "Bradley, how about helping turn around an airline?" "What?" Thanks to a suggestion from my boss, Tyler, I ended up getting involved in an industry I never thought I'd be a part of. "You're just going to tell us to cut labor costs? We don't have enough staff as it is." About 6 months ago, Mr. Irwin was much like Adam is now. He looked down on people in jobs that weren't directly related to the company's operations, like cleaning, which were essential to keeping the company running. He didn't realize his employees were becoming disengaged and was trying to save costs by cutting wages and relying on unpaid overtime to keep the company afloat. But it was like trying to put out a fire with a cup of water, and in the end, after persuasion from shareholders and executives, he reluctantly hired my firm as consultants. No, I don't intend to suggest any layoffs. There are plenty of other ways to turn around a company. "I see." My deliberately challenging words seemed to pique Mr. Irwin's interest. He ordered his secretary to bring over a thick file. "What's this?" "It's data for the 200 airplanes we operate." I don't dislike cocky youngsters, but I hate hearing them talk big without knowing anything. "So first, how about you memorize this?" He smirked as he watched me flip through the file without a word. His expression made it clear that he thought, "You won't understand a thing just by looking at it." I took my time and went through the entire file. "This aircraft is the same model as the one that had an accident in America last year." I handed the file back to the president, pointing to a specific page. "I believe it is." "You're quite knowledgeable, aren't you?" The cause of the accident was aging. A typical passenger aircraft has a lifespan of about 20 to 25 years. Since this one is nearing 20 years, you should probably strengthen inspections. "Good point. Well, then, let me show you something." I placed a file I had brought with me in front of Mr. Irwin. It was several times thicker than the one he had shown me. As he looked at it in surprise, I began flipping through the pages. "First, look at this data. Domestic airlines A and B have a sufficient ratio of employees to company size. I believe this company also has enough staff, but the issue is the concentration of employees in certain departments. This is a summary of a case in Italy where a company in financial difficulty reduced excessive services for passengers. When comparing the recent jet fuel prices, costs can be reduced by flying through this country. If you reflect that in the ticket prices, you can see." With each page I turned, Mr. Irwin's face grew paler. Then, before I even reached the halfway point, Mr. Irwin suddenly called out, "Wait. I understand, you're well versed in various areas of this industry. You've studied well, but For a mere consultant, I knew too much. Only 3 days after he had hired me, Mr. Irwin pointed out the depth of my knowledge. I corrected his words. 11 years. Pardon. 11 years, Mr. Irwin. That's how long I've wanted to enter this industry. Until I found out about my eyesight issues, I was determined to become a pilot. Even when my mom said, "It's okay, you don't need to worry about money anymore," I continued working multiple part-time jobs to save up for flight school. I studied the airline industry day and night for preparation. Even after realizing I couldn't become a pilot, I couldn't switch my mindset. It became a habit to keep up with news about the airline industry. That continued even after I started working. Even though I wasn't part of the airline industry, I might have known more about it than people who actually worked in it. So what do you think, Mr. Irwin? Based on my observations, I believe there are many areas for improvement in your company. Will you entrust me with the task? Yes, please. I'm counting on you, Bradley. The advice Bradley gave us, based on his vast knowledge, was incredibly accurate. Thanks to him, our company didn't just avoid bankruptcy. It grew to become one of the leading companies in the industry. And the reason I clean the office every morning is, of course, thanks to Bradley's advice. What? You didn't know, Adam? I'm the one who keeps not only the company but also the floor of this lounge sparkling clean. What? Along with various management reforms, one of the suggestions I made to Mr. Irwin was about cleaning. Walking around the office while cleaning would surely reveal many problems. And it would help them realize that cleaning is not a job to be looked down upon. Since I started cleaning myself, I realized how foolish I'd been. Every job and position has its challenges and merits. There is no one you should ever look down on. No way. Finally, Adam realized. He realized that in front of Mr. Irwin, he had not only mistaken me for a janitor but also disparaged the cleaning profession. His face went pale as he continued to glare at me with frustration and said, "You should have told me sooner if that's the case." But he was quickly stopped by Mr. Irwin, who berated him again. "What, you haven't learned your lesson yet? I'm sorry. I've heard rumors. There's a pilot who likes to throw around his father's name, a shareholder, to do whatever he pleases. He forces other employees to do menial tasks and covers up his slacking. I can't believe he's even using this lounge for himself. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Not to mention, you've left dirty footprints on the floor I cleaned with care. This proves you neglect to shine your shoes. How can a pilot who can't even keep his shoes clean be trusted with the safety of passengers? You'll be removed from your duties for a while and go back to basics and retrain." No way. With Mr. Irwin's reprimand, Adam collapsed onto the floor. Though he had been promoted to co-pilot, he was removed from piloting duties and would have to retrain alongside the rookies. Every morning, he'd join Mr. Irwin in cleaning the company. Everyone in the company saw him like this, and his pride was shattered. He became scared of being seen and started living as if he were hiding from everyone. My apologies for keeping you waiting, Bradley. Let's head to the company right away. Yes, of course. I look forward to it today. Encouraged by Mr. Irwin, I finally left the lounge. It was almost 6 months after the consultation ended, so today was like a regular checkup. I wanted to see for myself if any new management issues had arisen. I felt that Mr. Irwin would be okay now, though. By the way, Bradley, about what we discussed the other day. Mr. Irwin suddenly turned around, smiling widely. The other day. I won't let you forget. I'm talking about the arranged marriage with my daughter. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that today. Oh, right, that. Please. Bradley, I wouldn't mind skipping the engagement and heading straight to marriage. Ha ha. I had laughed it off many times before, but Mr. Irwin was getting more enthusiastic. It seemed like it wouldn't be long before he brought his daughter to the office. How was I going to talk my way out of this one? It seemed more challenging than turning around the company. The next day, I was waiting for my flight back to Tokyo in the airport lobby. Then, someone sat down in the seat next to me. Summer. So it was you, Bradley. You were the one who helped save our company," Summer said with a bright smile. She had been curious about who had saved the company from bankruptcy 6 months ago. This morning, the topic came up at work, and she learned the consultant's name for the first time. It turned out to be me. So maybe we passed each other at the company many times without noticing. Me too. I can't believe you were so close all this time. What a surprise. She chuckled in her flight attendant uniform, looking more beautiful than ever. I realized I still had feelings for her. I love Summer's smile. Her bright personality, how she can be a bit of a scatterbrain while still being so reliable. But, Summer, you're with Adam. Hey, Bradley, what did you mean by "I wish you happiness"? What? The night before last. Who am I supposed to be happy with? Wait, you're not with Adam? As soon as I said it, Summer began waving her hands wildly. No, no. There's nothing like that between us. What? Adam's been spreading those rumors at work on his own. What? According to Summer, Adam was so serious about her that he became a pilot just to be with her. But since Summer didn't care about him, Adam started working his way from the outside in. He spread lies to their co-workers, saying that they were dating. It's been a real problem. When he says he needs to talk about work, I can't ignore it, right? It could be important. But then people start saying it's a date. Oh. I realized there was another thing I liked about Summer. How serious and responsible she was about her job. She truly loved her work as a flight attendant. And I've liked someone else since middle school. What? I felt like I'd been struck in the head. Summer, unaware of my feelings, gave me a bright, happy smile. You've helped me again. Back in high school with English and with the company. And also, during high school entrance exams. You've always helped me, Bradley. During the exams. Oh, so you really don't remember? Look. Saying that, she messed up the neatly arranged bangs she had for her flight, hiding her eyes. Then she curved her lips downward into a pout. Oh, you were that girl? Memories from long ago suddenly came rushing back to me. On the day of the high school entrance exam, there had been heavy snowfall in the area since morning. I was walking carefully to the exam venue, trying not to slip. Suddenly, someone came running up behind me. No! A girl wearing a uniform from another middle school slipped and fell spectacularly as she passed me. Thank you. She took my outstretched hand hesitantly and got up. She was quite tall. She had long legs like a model, but she was hunched over with her long bangs hiding her eyes, and she seemed nervous and timid. Thank you, thank you. She kept looking back at me and bowing her head repeatedly. Watching her, I thought it was a shame. Just the night before, there was a TV program featuring airports. They said taller people have an easier time handling overhead luggage. If she straightened her back, she would excel and look great in those uniforms. You said I'd make a great flight attendant or something. I thought about it a lot during the exam. Even though I didn't think I could ever be like those amazing people on TV. But I wanted to try. That one comment of mine sparked her interest in becoming a flight attendant. After the exams were over, she researched how to become one and decided she needed to change herself first. After I cut my bangs, practiced walking with a straight back, and spent lots of time practicing my smile in front of the mirror, something strange happened. I started liking my height, which I used to hate. And I grew to like looking people in the eye and smiling. Because of my dream of becoming a flight attendant, I began to like who I was. So, it's all thanks to you. Your words, Bradley, saved me when I was full of insecurities. Summer, who actually became a flight attendant, smiled brightly like the sun. Summer, so you were that girl from back then. That boy has always been the one I like. Even if Bradley gets married someday. Wait, married? Summer tilted her head and asked, Isn't that right, seeing my surprise? Because someone at work said they heard a rumor about you, the amazing consultant who saved the company. Having an arranged marriage with Mr. Irwin's daughter. The president was so excited, saying it was only a matter of time before the wedding. No. That's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Now Summer looked surprised. I turned down the proposal. I told them I already have someone I love enough to want to marry. What? I thought the same, even if you were dating someone. But you're really not with Adam? Suddenly, tears welled up in Summer's eyes, and in an instant, they spilled over. No. Sorry. I didn't mean to doubt you, Summer. I can't stop them. Not at all. She seemed happy and relieved, finding out that the person she loved also loved her. Summer smiled while wiping her tears. I saw an expression on her face that I had never seen before. I knew then that I wanted to fall in love with all her expressions from here on out. I'll keep in touch, Summer. All the time from now on. Yeah, me too. Smiling brightly, she leaned against my shoulder. I couldn't help but cherish the warmth of her presence next to me. Since this was her workplace, I just barely resisted the urge to hug her tight. The news about how I turned around Summer's company spread quickly throughout the industry. Many airlines reached out to me, asking for consultations. I ended up flying all over Japan, and I became incredibly busy. Even though we were both busy, I always traveled using Summer's airline, so we were happy to see each other more often. A year later, Summer and I got married. Though Mr. Irwin was disappointed about the arranged marriage, he was thrilled about me marrying one of his employees. The entire company celebrated us. With so many people watching over us, we embarked on a new journey, but we chose not to live together. I love seeing you work so hard, Summer. And I love seeing you help people and bring smiles to their faces, Bradley. As long as we had these feelings, we knew we'd be fine even apart. Whenever I saw contrails in the sky, I thought of Summer. And whenever I flew on a plane, I wanted to stand tall and meet her. Every day I devoted myself to my work, striving to help those who needed me. Losing a dream is painful and difficult, just as it was for me. But I also gained so much afterward. I found a rewarding and wonderful career. The things I cultivated for my dream helped me to assist others. And I was able to be with the person I loved most. The end of a dream isn't just filled with sadness. It's also a beginning. So I hope that those who have lost their dreams will hold their heads high and make a new start, and from my current happiness, I'll continue to send encouragement to anyone struggling beyond the skies, now and always.